Hello and welcome to the Situation Report today. Glad to have you joining me. This is the show where we do our best every single episode to give you the information and perspectives you need to navigate an ever-changing culture. My name is Jeremy Stalnecker, and I am glad to have you joining. This would be a very difficult conversation if I didn't think there was someone on the other side listening. So thank you for listening. Really do appreciate it. Today we're going to discuss a topic that we've touched on just a little bit in the last couple of weeks, but one that I believe we will probably be talking about more in the future. And that topic is artificial intelligence, AI. There are a lot of different opinions and perspectives on AI, whether or not it is good or bad, whether we should engage with it or stay away from it. There are some very intelligent people who are on one hand saying, hey, maybe we need to stop, pause, figure this thing out before we continue on. Others who are invested fully in developing this technology as quickly as possible. You see AI popping up on just about every digital platform, from small podcasting platforms to platforms like Google and Microsoft. It's everywhere. We can't get away from it. The question is, how should we think about it as Christians? How should we think about AI? How should we think about these emerging technologies? Last week, we had a guest on who I think really helped me at least to understand maybe a different perspective, a different way to look at some of these technologies, to look at them as tools and not something to be feared as replacing us. But that conversation continues. What is really interesting around conversations about technology generally, but artificial intelligence and these emerging technologies more specifically, is not how we currently, as adults living at this time when these technologies are coming on board, not how we're going to deal with them. I think we'll maybe try to understand the best way to use them in our lives and the best way to implement them, the things that we need to stay away from, some safeguards that need to be put on. All of this will happen. We're adults and we'll figure it out and we'll adjust as the technology adjusts. What is perhaps of a greater concern or interest to me is how I'm going to help my kids, that generation that's coming up now, how I'm going to help them understand how to use this technology, how they should view technologies like this one. Whatever we think about artificial intelligence and these very powerful search engines really is what they are, how we think about those, what we feel about them, our perspective on those. It's important, but even in the last year, in the last several months, every time a new iteration of this comes out, it's much more powerful, it's faster, it's more capable. And so when we look down the road 5 years or 10 years, we can only imagine what all of this will look like. And again, the question is, how do we think about it? And more importantly, how do we help our kids think about it? I work through these scenarios all the time in my mind, and I'm very interested in this as someone who has young adult kids, who has teenage kids, but also as someone who cares about the future of our country and the future of the world. How should we think about these things? So that led me to looking for some resources. One that I found is not a resource that I always recommend people go to. But on the New York Times last month, there was an article by Christina Karen. Christina, it says here in her bio, is a mother of two, and she experimented with ChatGPT for hours to help fellow parents better understand how it works. She's an author and spends a lot of time talking about technology and those things. And this is what she was looking at. And she took her own kids through a process of experimenting with them, talking about it with them. That's what the article is about. She explains ChatGPT. And if you're not familiar with ChatGPT, you probably have not been paying attention. But that is the artificial intelligence language model from OpenAI. And it has been in the headlines. It's been everywhere. You just about can't get away from the conversations about it. So she talks about that. She explains what it is, but she goes through a process here that I thought was interesting. She said here, when we're working with our kids, when we're teaching our kids technology, there are a few things that we should do. We need to, number one, experiment together. experiment together. She breaks this down in this article, and when she says that, what she means is that she sat down with her kids, she put in some search terms, she asked ChatGPT to do some tasks. One of them she asked was, write a song in Taylor Swift's voice that uses themes from a Dr. Seuss books. She's sitting with her kids and she goes through this and it spits out something. So she talks about that. Then she asks the kids, what do you think about that? How do you feel about what just happened? And really walks through that with the kids. She says also that you need to get to know the technology and its limitations. That's also very important. I think sometimes we're afraid of things we don't understand. So get to know the technology, learn from it. OpenAI is open, it's free. So it's easy for anyone to access. We can go ahead and play with it and learn from it and figure out how truthful the returns are. Get to know the technology, learn its limitations, understand what it can and cannot do. That is very helpful. She says then stay on top of new developments. How is it being used in the classroom? How is it being used in the media space as it relates even to the information that we received? How is it being used? So stay on top of new technology. This was a great article, and again, it's kind of a starting point. And really what this says is understand it, help your kids know how to use it, and be aware of how the technology is developing, and more specifically, how your kids are using it. So that was very helpful as a starting point. As a Christian, I want to not only understand how I can help my kids use new technology, but I want to understand how I can think about it biblically, but how my kids can think about this new technology biblically. So I continued to look and continued trying to find articles and folks who had written on it. I came across this article written in April. It's on the American Reformer website, written by Jessica Pearl-Smith. Jessica is a reporter. She writes on a lot of different things, but she's writing here on this technology. And I thought this was very, very helpful. The title of this article is Intentional Christian Parenting in an Artificially Intelligent Age. I just like that. I like the idea that it is intentional Christian parenting. That's a good place to start. When we look at technologies like this one, when we look at any emerging technology, anything that's happening around us, we as Christian parents need to be intentional about parenting our kids, about raising our kids. The New York Times article brought that out as well. Intentionally sit down with your kids and help them learn how to use this technology and help them to understand what it can and cannot do. But one of the challenges I feel as a parent in a world where technology is changing so quickly, one of the challenges that I have is that I want to just let it go and let it be. I don't want to understand it. I don't want to use it. I struggle sometimes just to use my cell phone. I do my best with technology, but it can all be very confusing. And it's easy to say, well, it's here. It's here to stay. People are going to use it. My kids will figure it out. It's going to be fine. But as a Christian parent, I need to be intentional about helping my kids navigate the many shifts that will happen in our cultural environment. And technology is a big one. One of the downsides, I think, with artificial intelligence is that if we are not careful, and I think this is where a lot of people will end up, if we're not careful, our ability to reason, our ability to think deeply, our ability to figure things out on our own, that ability, it's a muscle. If we don't use it, we're going to lose it. And the ability to do that, to think deeply, to reason things out, to figure things out on our own, it's going to go away. If we're relying on tools of technology to help us accomplish all of these tasks, having someone else or something else think for us. And as a Christian parent, I understand how important it is that my kids have the ability to think deeply, to have thoughts that are outside of what culture tells them to think, that are outside of the normal box of things, if you will. And when we're navigating an ever-changing culture, we need to be able to think on our own, think apart from the cultural environment, to think apart from technology that supports that. We can use those tools, but we shouldn't be bound to those tools. And so, Even though I may want to stay away from some of this technology just because I don't want to learn one new thing, I don't want to try to figure something else out, whatever the case, I need to be intentional about helping my kids, helping them to see technology as a tool that can be used. It can make them more productive. It can help them in so many different areas. I'm thankful for technology. That's even the reason we can do this show. I'm thankful for all of that. But I need to be intentional about putting the intellectual and the spiritual, the mental framework around that so that my kids can deal with this technology and they can deal with whatever variations of this technology we find or may find a year from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. As things change, I want my children to understand how they can process and use these technologies most effectively. I say all of that to say, coming back to this title, Raising AI Resilient Kids, Intentional Christian Parenting in an Artificially Intelligent Age. I firmly believe that so many of the problems our children have are because parents are not intentional about training their kids. We have this kind of idea that as parents, we should protect our children, keep them safe, but then let them come to their own conclusions on these major life issues, these important issues. Let them figure it out on their own. Our job is to keep them safe. Our job is to keep them fed and sheltered and clothed. But beyond that, they need to figure this out on their own. Parents were put in the lives of children to instruct those children, to teach those children, and to raise those children so that they can then live the life they were created by God to live. Now, if you're not a Christian parent and you would hear this, maybe you would say that you are more conservative, but maybe not Christian. You don't have a specific faith background or foundation. The principles are the same. I believe that as a parent, understanding God and having the Bible to guide us is so important and so helpful. But even if you separate yourself from those, the principles of intentionally parenting your kids in an artificially intelligent age would remain the same. Again, coming back to this article by Jessica Pearl Smith, April 18, 2023 in the American Reformer, Intentional Christian Parenting in an Artificially Intelligent Age. She also spends some time talking about generative AI, explaining what it is and how it is used. But then she walks through a number of really thoughts, and I like this way of walking through it. Some very clear steps. What do we do in the face of this? How do we deal with this? How do we view it? How do we think about it? How do we teach our kids in this moment? She goes through some things. I want to walk through her points and then give my kind of perspective on them, but I think this is very, very helpful. Number one, she says, respect the human innovation and brilliance that brought us here. Respect the human innovation and brilliance that brought us here. And she says this is probably the most generous and optimistic point I'll make, but I think it merits a minute of its own. And then she goes on. I'm not going to read everything she wrote here. I commend this article to you. I love that this is the starting point though here, and this has been a help to me even in the last couple of weeks. I have the ability to see technologies like this and so many other technologies that require human brilliance and human innovation and years of hard work and dedication and focus. I have the ability to look at these technologies and miss the fact that there are human people that worked and thought and planned and produced these unbelievable technologies that make our lives easier. We need to take the time when we see something like AI to respect the human innovation and brilliance that got us here, not as a way to elevate the human mind or the brilliance that got us here, but instead to step back and express wonder and awe at a God who created us with the ability to then create technologies like this one. I mean, think about this. What we have is a God, a creative God, a God who created the world and all that is in it, the systems that are interconnected. So much of the world, some of the most simple aspects of the world, from plant life to how water interacts with the environment. So many questions around these. A lot of questions have been answered. So many questions still unanswered. We are not an accident. The world is not an accident. We are extremely complex, developed by a very creative God. And then we have a God that created humans who have the ability to reason, to use the mind that we were given, the experiences that we've had, to build on the past into something new and creative and helpful. We should respect the human innovation and brilliance that brought us here, but we should also allow the fact that humans can do this, to reflect an incredibly creative, brilliant, all-powerful, all-knowing God. It's amazing to me that people who reject God would look at something like this technology and use that as evidence to support their denial or their rejection of God. See what humans can do. The same humans that can do that can't explain where life comes from. There are theories, there are ideas, but there is an incredible amount of faith that's required to accept these theories and ideas. And yet, those same people who can't figure out how all of the world works and the universe works and how these pieces interplay together can create technologies like this. This reflects an incredible God, and we should take the time when we see technologies like this to step back and really wonder at how amazing God is, how creative God has made us, how capable He's made humans. It's unbelievable. This is one of the perspectives that's helped me recently, is understanding that our ability to think and reason and create is a reflection or connection to a God that made us in His image. What a truth. The second thing she says, and this is again is also very helpful, we need to refuse to confuse knowledge with wisdom. This is a great, great point. Refuse to confuse knowledge with wisdom. I remember when the idea of search engines became popular. I'm sure something like that has been around for a long time. You could use the search feature, even in a Word document or a word processing document for a long time. But when we came to search engines, things like Google, and you could put in a search term and Google, I don't know how it all works, but Google, through some magic of back-end construction and algorithms and all of these things I've heard people talk about but don't fully understand, it searches the World Wide Web, searches the internet for the answer to your query, to your question. You put in a search term, it finds out there the pieces of information that are on the World Wide Web, and it pulls you those search results. It organizes those search results and prioritizes them. And we could talk about whether that's good or bad, moral or immoral. I would imagine it's mostly amoral, but it's all there. How powerful that is. What that did, though, was it created this environment, and we all know what this is like, where we don't have to know stuff necessarily because we can Google or search for anything. There was a time not that long ago in my life where a person could say something, and if they said it confidently enough, the people in the room would believe them, mostly because they had to. You could talk about something that happened in history or some fact or figure or whatever. You could say it, and if you said it with enough confidence and there wasn't someone else in the room that knew something different, people would go along with it. Now, people pick up their phone and they Google and they fact check you in real time. This happens. It annoys me. I really hate it when my kids do it, but it happens. We don't have to really know stuff anymore, stuff about history and facts and figures, because we can just search for those immediately. The problem with that, the challenge with that, is that we can confuse knowing things, knowledge, for wisdom. The difference between knowledge and wisdom: knowledge is knowing things. Wisdom is understanding how to apply that knowledge, how to apply the things we know. There are a lot of people who know a lot of things that are very unwise. They don't know how to apply the knowledge that they have. When it comes to something like AI, and the easiest way for me to understand it is it's just a very powerful search engine. It's pulling from the vast amount of knowledge and information that exists on the internet. And you put in very complex search terms, you ask questions, and that artificial intelligence, it understands from the question you're asking what kind of information it needs to be looking for, and it compiles lists or compiles the information you're looking for, and you can ask it to refine that, and it might help you even in the process of that. But what is it doing? It's a very powerful search engine. But the way that information is framed is more as though we're having a conversation with someone. It's not like the search results that come back on a Google search where it's just a list of documents or a list of other websites that you can go to. The results that we find on an AI platform come back very much as if we're having a conversation with a really smart friend. And if we're not careful, we can not only overlook the shortcomings, the inaccuracies that search engine will find, but we can mistake knowledge, having information, for wisdom. This is where I believe we need to spend some time talking with our kids. I said in the beginning, it's very important that in a world and a culture that's ever changing, a generation that is coming up, that's growing up, they need to know how to think deeply, how to understand what's going on, how to make decisions and process things outside of the box that the world wants them to be in. This is the point of that conversation that we can have. It's one thing to know things. AI can help you know things, but thinking deeply, understanding things, that's wisdom. It's possible to use the tool to get information, but we need to use our brain, our experience. I would say the Bible, that's God's word to us, the framework that He establishes to know how to apply that knowledge. That's wisdom. We must refuse to confuse knowledge with wisdom. That's great. The next thing she says here is engage with the natural world and limit screen time. This goes back to a conversation we've been having for a long time, right? We talk about limiting screen time. What's interesting about this conversation is that limiting screen time has become much more difficult because even in the classroom, young adults, young people have screens that they use for their classes. Teachers teach with screens. We carry around a very powerful computer in the form of a phone that has a screen. So much of our interaction, even with other people and with information, with knowledge, is on a screen. But we have to be very intentional about engaging with the natural world, taking time to go out into the world without the phone, without the computer, without the technology. Being in the world and spending time thinking and viewing and receiving and allowing what God has created to impact our lives. But we have to be intentional about it. Remember, intentionality, intentional Christian parenting. Be intentional about it. Our children, just like us, will gravitate toward spending more time receiving information from computers and phones and other screens. We need to be intentional about getting outside and being a part of nature, which takes us to her next point: practice sympathy and foster friendship. Practice sympathy and foster friendship. ChatGPT, artificial intelligence, other search engines, technology, it does what it was created to do, provides results that it was programmed or created to provide, but does not have the ability to imbue those results with sympathy, that is concern, that's care, or help us to develop genuine friendships. There are a lot of research studies. There's a lot of information available to show us that we have become lonelier as a society as social media has increased in use. The more people that use social media, the less happy people are because they are replacing real friendships, genuine friendships, the ability to express sympathy and have relationships with other people on an emotional level, replacing that with technology. And that does not make us better. We have to be intentional about teaching our kids how to not only have sympathy for others, to care for other people, but how to foster and build friendships and relationships. And I fear that if we're not intentional about that, we're raising kids that won't know how to have relationships, how to develop friendships, how to care about people without a screen between them. Next, she goes to this point, cultivate the fruits of the Spirit. If we were to go to the New Testament book of Galatians chapter 5, we find a list of the fruit of the Spirit, 9 elements that the Holy Spirit of God produces in us. Where does that come from? It comes from understanding that we are to spend time in God's Word and spend time committed to doing what God tells us to do. We are never more fully alive than when we're engaged doing the work that the Creator has called us to do. And the fruit of the Spirit, that is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, kindness, goodness, these are produced in us as we pursue God and His plan, His will for our life. And then finally, she ends with this: grapple with the brevity of this life. Grapple with the brevity of this life. It is really, really important for us to resist the pull that technology has of convincing us that things will always improve, always get better, go on forever. We need to grapple with the brevity of life, because it is only as we number our days that we are able to apply our hearts to wisdom, as the Bible says. When we understand how brief life really is, it puts everything else into context. It puts everything else into a clear view where we understand that we don't want to waste our time or spend the time that we have on things that don't actually matter. Which brings us back to the place where we can use technology as a tool, all technologies as tools, to help us live the life that God created us to live. When we replace hope and purpose with technology, we've gone the wrong direction. And that is the gravitational pull that technology has, particularly in our day and age. But when we understand the brevity of life, we understand the purpose of God and the call of God on our lives, that His purpose is bigger than the world that we live in, then we'll view technology rightly as elements in this world that can better equip us to do what we have been uniquely created to do. That article again is called Raising AI Resilient Kids by Jessica Prohl-Smith, April 18th, and it's found in the American Reformer. Her subtitle, Intentional Christian Parenting in an Artificially Intelligent Age. That's a great starting point to think about these things. But this is an area we cannot simply pretend is not here or is going away. It's here and it's here to stay. It won't look the way it does now in the future, but as all technology does, whatever the future has will build on what we have right now. We need to figure this out. We need to start thinking clearly about it and understand how we can use it to a greater degree to impact the world around us as God has created us to. And I think if we view this technology and all technology that way, we're not going to view it as a threat, view it as something to be scared of. We can teach our kids and others how to use it, and we can use it in a way that helps us to do really what we're uniquely called by God to do. And I think that's very, very helpful. Many of these things I think about because I have kids, and then as my older kids get older, my son's getting married in a few weeks, I think about the future with grandkids and some of these other things that I haven't had these thoughts before. And now I'm having these thoughts. And those thoughts, as happy as they can be, cause great concern in my heart because I want to do a good job raising, parenting, leading. And a big part of that is not being afraid of what's coming, but figure out how to navigate an ever-changing culture and all that it brings. I hope that's a help to you. Please check out some of these articles, some of these resources. Spend some time thinking about this, talking about it with your own kids. Be intentional and do the work of a parent. Do the work of raising your kids. God has put you in that place. Take it seriously, be grateful for it, and lean in. Thank you for listening. Really do appreciate it. If you're not yet subscribed to this podcast, take some time to subscribe. That would be very, very helpful. And then also you can jump over to our website, thesitrep.org, thesitrep.org. You can find a newsletter sign up there. That gets you this content when it comes out. We'd love to push that to your inbox, but it also has an archive of shows, other great information there. Please go and check that out. Really do appreciate it. Look forward to talking to you next time. We were not made to live in isolation. Sadly, many of our veterans feel they need to fight their battles alone. This self-isolation has led to the staggering statistic of more than 20 veterans taking their lives every day.
A lot of guys end up drinking, a lot of guys end up losing hope. Someone will go to the VA and they'll try to get, prescription medications to help with PTSD. They'll get pills for anxiety, they'll get pills because they can't sleep, now they'll get pills for depression before they know it. They're taking 12 different medications. And when it's not working out, these guys lose hope, and that's why there's 23 guys a day committing suicide.
The mission of Mighty Oaks is to eradicate the veteran suicide epidemic and help our warriors change their legacies. As a result, we've been able to help over 4,000 veterans and first responders by equipping them with the tools they need to live the lives they were created to live.
Everything they said just kept hitting me in the heart over and over and over again. It's like all the things that I didn't know that I needed to hear. And I opened my heart to God that week, dude, and I've been a different person ever since.
Our faith-based, peer-to-peer approach has one of the highest success rates of any program available today, offering hope and understanding to those who need it most. We provide our programs and resources, including travel, at no cost to our warriors.
I remember talking to a licensed social worker who actually handed me a pamphlet to Mighty Oaks. So I went, and I'm glad I did.
By aligning their lives to biblical principles, these men and women are able to lead their families, their communities, and our nation. Our mission is to serve and restore our nation's warriors and families who have endured hardship through their service to America, and to help them find new life purpose through hope in Christ. It's your generosity that can make a difference in the lives of the men and women who have fought for our country and our freedoms. Now that they're home, don't let them fight alone. Learn more at mightyoaksprograms.org. Just when you thought it couldn't get any better, Mike Lindell with MyPillow is launching the MyPillow 2.0. When Mike invented MyPillow, it had everything you could ever want in a pillow. Now, nearly 20 years later, he discovered a new technology that makes it even better. The MyPillow 2.0 has the patented adjustable fill of the original MyPillow, and now with a brand new fabric that is made with a temperature regulating thread. The MyPillow 2.0 is the softest, smoothest, and coolest pillow you'll ever own. For our exclusive listeners, the MyPillow 2.0 is buy one, get one free offer with promo code SITREP. MyPillow 2.0 temperature regulating technology is 100% made in the USA and comes with a 10-year warranty and a 60-day money-back guarantee. Just go to MyPillow.com and click on the radio listener square to buy the one, get one free offer. Enter promo code SITREP or call 800-870-0283 to get your MyPillow 2.0 now.